Hi, I'm Jamie, and I'll be doing your mains today. I'll be doing seared salmon and shrimp stir fry with a brown rice pilaf and a green curry sauce. Okay, so we're going to start off by doing our rice pilaf because that's got to sit in the oven for an hour. So we're going to start up our heat, get it going. I'm going to let it sit at about a medium heat. I'm going to take my butter, open it up. And then just a little bit into my pan and allow it to melt. Okay. As you're using your equipment, making sure that you're cleaning it properly. Sanitizers, you have sinks available, so make sure you're going to the sink, cleaning your dishes as often as possible, making sure that you're nice and clean as you go. I'm going to allow my butter to melt. I've got my onion that I've pre-diced. You'll have onion in here. We're going to throw it in and it's just going to cook out. You're looking for no color. So the point of that is to have a nice clean look of it. No little spots of black, no little spots of brown. It's a nice clear color all throughout. Just allowing my butter to melt. Okay. That's good. I'm going to add in my onions, making sure that I'm scraping the bottom so that there's no waste. Okay. In the meantime, I've got my stock heating up. You want to bring it up to a simmer so that it cuts down your cooking time here once you've added it into your rice pilaf. So just a nice little simmer, waiting for our onions to soften up, no color. So when you're doing this, you're looking for even cuts on everything. So my onion should be nice and even. No big chunks, no small chunks, nice even throughout. Okay. So that's cooking. I've got my rice here. I'm going to leave it as is. Doesn't need to be rinsed like some rices do because it doesn't need that film out. And you want the kind of starchiness to it. So no rinsing on that. My onions have started to kind of simmer and go, so it won't be long now till they're translucent, which means that they're ready for me to add in my rice pilaf. So nice little bubbles, but no coloring as of yet, no nothing. This just means that they're starting to cook and become translucent, which is what we're looking for. Okay. Making sure to stir it regularly so that we're not getting part of our onions that are cooked and part of them that are still raw. So you're getting even heat distribution and even cooking on my onions. Okay, so they're getting really close. Probably in about a minute here, I'm going to add in my onions. So they're getting really close, starting to become translucent and not full white. Now that they're kind of translucent and soft, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in my rice. And what this does is it toasts a little bit, so it opens up my grain so that it's able to cook. I'm making sure that all my grain is getting coated with fat from my butter. And we're just gonna allow it to toast a little bit. That's gonna add a little bit of that flavor that we're looking for when we're looking for the rice pilaf. Okay. My stock is now hot. It's not boiling, so it's not too aggressive, but it's nice and warm. I can see the smoke coming out, so it'll be ready to go once my rice is ready. So my grains will start to come kind of translucent as well, same as my onions, which is what I'm looking for. It's got a little bit of cook on it. I'm going to add in my stock just a little bit at a time. And what that's going to do is, because it bubbles like that, it's going to release some of my liquid, but it's also going to cool it down. Now I can add the remaining of it so that I'm not evaporating all of my liquid all at once. And so it has a chance to actually fully cook all of my ingredients. I'm going to turn this off in the back here just to make sure that I'm not burning my pot. Okay. So no color. My onions are nice and clear. My rice has been toasted. Now I've just got my liquid in. I'm going to bring it up to simmer. I'm going to add in a little bit of salt. I'd also add in some pepper. Okay. Before your liquid goes into the oven, I'd give it a little bit of taste, because that flavoring that's in there right now is what your rice is going to become. So you're going to have that flavor that's in your liquid now absorbing into the rice, and that's the flavor that you're going to want your end rice to be at. Okay, so it's simmered, it's brought back up to simmer. We've got the bubbles working. They're going to boil in a couple seconds here. I'm going to throw the lid on, throw it into my oven. When it comes out, I'm going to fluff it up a little bit, make sure that it's ready to go. While it's in my oven, I'm going to make sure that I check it, because the worst thing that's going to happen is come an hour down the road, you're going to have burnt rice to the bottom of your pot because the oven was a little too high, a little too low. So I've got my nice bubble. I think I'm ready to throw that in. So I'm going to put my lid on. I'm going to turn off my element. Turn off my element, and I'm just going to throw it in the oven, making sure that we're checking it, making sure that your oven's sitting about 300 to 350. Make sure that your oven's on. Double check. And there we go. Right into the oven, and it'll sit there. I'll check it every once in a while just to make sure it's where it needs to be. And yeah, come an hour, it'll be out and ready for you to serve onto your plate. Double check your seasoning at the end, just in case. So now we're going to start on our vegetables to our stir fry. I always like to prep my vegetables before I prep any of my proteins, because there's less chance of cross-contamination happening within that. So going with that, I've got an onion and a carrot here. I'm going to deal with all my extras, so I'm going to peel all of my vegetables. I'm going to wipe down my cutting board to make sure that there's no gunk or grime on my cutting board, and then I'm going to process it. Okay. So I'm going to take my root off. I'm going to take the end off, cut it in half. Okay. Peeling it to make sure that there's none of the shell left on or the peel. When you're doing this, you're making sure that it's all fully off and nothing's remaining, because it's not very pleasant to have that little bit of skin coming in on your dish, and it doesn't cook the same as the rest. Okay. That piece is nice and clean. I'm going to put it on a clean part of my cutting board. That one came off way nicer. There we go. Okay. So first peel down. Now I'm going to peel my carrot. So there's a lot of ways, depending on your peeler or whatever it is. I like to go away from myself when I'm dealing with carrots so that there's less chance of injury to yourself. Okay, So it's nice, all nice and peeled. Before I began peeling this, I remembered to wash it, so we're getting some of that original dirt off. Just taking my trims off, and that's all said and done. Okay. I'm gonna wipe down so that I have no chance of having any of the extra gunk or dirt or anything that's gonna come off of my onion and my carrots on my cutting board. So I'll start with my carrot. So we're gonna just take a little piece off. Okay, that's just gonna be extra. So now we'll have a nice clean slice that we can continue on. When we're doing this, we're looking for evenness, right? So we're looking for an even cut, as well as keeping in mind that when we cut this, we now have to cut the rest of this in similar sizes. So when we're cooking it, it's very similar cooking time, so we're not taking forever to cook one thing and now that's things raw while the other stuff is all undercooked or overcooked. Okay, so now we're going to start just nice thin even slices on my carrots. Making sure they're staying even. I've got a nice circle, nice shape to it. Okay. Okay. With this, take your time. I'd rather you take your time, have a nice little cut, but making sure that it's all nice and even. I've got nice thin slices that are even with each other all the way across the board. And I'd rather take that time, extra 2 seconds. A, you're not gonna cut yourself. B, it's gonna make sure that you have a nice product to put out to your judges. So I've now done my carrot. I've got my little bit of trim that's gonna go into the compost. And I've got my nice carrots ready to go. Okay. Now I'm gonna do my broccoli. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take off all these leaves that are just kind of extra around. Okay. Okay. Making sure that they're nice and clean. I might clean up my little edge, make sure that it's nice and flat instead of the tilted one. So I've got a nice flat edge, it's a decent size. This one's gonna be very similar size to it. Similar length on my stem cut, making sure it's nice and clean. Okay. If you have a piece that's a bit bigger, this one's going to be similar. But if you have a piece that's a bit bigger than all the other ones, I'd suggest cutting it in half, just so that you have even, once again, looking for that even cooking. So I've sliced and then just pull apart. Now I've got a little bit more similar size in my broccoli. Yeah. Right. Also, if you're looking for maybe a nice sear on a color, this will sit nicely and pop up and it'll have a nice color on it, or you can look for just the whole broccoli. That's a choice you're gonna make, but if you're gonna make it, make sure that throughout it is all the same. Okay. So with this, we're wanting as little food waste as possible, but at the same time, you wanna make sure that you have nice presentable vegetables for all your dishes. Okay, so I've got a nice big piece, so I'll probably just cut down my middle, open it up, and it's all similar sizes now. Okay, I'm gonna get rid of my trim into my compost. Give it a little bit of wipe because the broccoli's a little bit, got some leftover gunk and stuff on there from it. All right, I'm gonna go for my pepper next. So for my pepper, we've got the seeds inside. I'm looking to get rid of those, making sure that there's no seeds left. I'm gonna cut both ends off so that I've got a nice uniform shape throughout it all. Okay. If my ends are nice and the same kind of shape as my pepper, I'll use them, but if not, they'll go into my compost, just to make sure that we're getting a nice uniform shape and size. Okay. I'm gonna make one insert down into my pepper. Gonna go in, and then just along the board, I'm gonna roll my pepper so that I'm taking out all those insides. making sure that you're cautious of your fingers so that we're not getting any nicks. The inside's gonna go. I now have no seeds, nice uniform shape, and a nice flat surface to cut with. Okay, so I'm gonna trim off my little bit of end because it's not nice to me. And then I'm just gonna make sure that I've got nice slices, okay? Sitting uniform, right? So I've got a nice thin cut over here. I'm gonna look for their similar size right over here. Okay. As well, when you're doing this, you're making sure that you have some uniform amounts of things, right? So if you're putting on your dish 3 carrots, you want to try and make sure you've got enough for 3 carrots on one dish, 3 carrots on another, 3 on another. Though it's a stir fry, you want to make sure that the judges are going to have a little bit of everything, right? So they're going to have some carrots, going to have some broccoli, some pepper, they're going to have their shrimp, right? So uniformity across the board is what we're really looking for, right? So even coloring wise, that's why we didn't want the onions to be browned, was because we wanted them all to be uniform color, no excess. Okay. Okay. It's an uneven section for me. I'm going to put that into recycle and just finish cutting through. Okay. So one of the biggest kind of looking for here is that you have good knife skills. Take those, buy a huge bag of peppers, take them, practice on them, make sure that you know your skills, right? Your family might be eating stir fry for the next week or next couple months, but they'll appreciate it at the end when you have beautiful knife skills that you can take into the rest of your life. Okay. That's my pepper, it's nicely all done. Same thing, uniformity, similar kind of size to this that I was looking for. Okay, so now I've got all my vegetables. Now I've got my onion. Because I'm gonna sliver it, I'm gonna take out my root here at the very bottom, otherwise all of my onion is gonna connect and it's just gonna be a whole whack of big pieces together instead of nice thin slices, which is what I'm looking for. So I'm just gonna take my root out. So this little chunk here, okay, goes to recycling. Okay, so there's a couple different ways. You can kind of go slanted and you can go upward. I like to just take, again, that little extra off that's not gonna be useful, and then just give it nice little slices, making sure, again, that we're fine, same kind of size as the peppers. Once I get to about half, what I like to do is I like to turn my onion, so now I have the same shape, right? Because this way I'm going down towards my fingers, this way I'm moving up towards them, so there's less chance of injuries throughout it all. Okay. So once again, probably get rid of this little bit so that it's all uniform. Okay. These inside ones are similar, the middle is not, so I'll kind of keep that separate. And that's all my onions, once again, nice and thin. I've got uniform shapes across the board. They're gonna cook evenly, they're gonna be even, they're gonna be set. So what I might do is I might blanch my broccoli, or I'll be one of the first things to put into my pan because it's got a little bit of a longer cook time. So I suggest blanching broccoli. Okay, I'm gonna grab my pan here. I'm gonna turn on my element, making sure that if I'm not gonna watch it, I'm gonna have it at a lower heat, but I'm right here ready to go, so I'm gonna have it at a higher heat. Looking for probably about a mid-high to high heat. If you're going to cut your vegetables in mise en place at the very beginning of your before you cut your proteins or deal with your proteins, what I do is I put it into individual cups or some kind of storage, throw it into your fridge. They're ready to go. You've prepped everything that you need for your dish, and now last minute, when it's last couple minutes before service, when you're ready to start stir frying, you can now just pull them out. They're ready to go. You're just gonna start going. So looking for heat coming off my pan, almost there. I'm gonna take some butter or some oil, whatever you're looking for. Throw it in my pan, so I've got that nice sizzle that started immediately. Okay. Swirl it around. I'm probably gonna drop my heat a little bit because I see my butter's beginning to brown and I don't really want that. I want a nice light color. Okay, so my broccoli is gonna be my longest cook time, so that's gonna go in first. You're gonna hear that nice sear sound from it. If they were blanched, then they would be one of the later ones because they've already had a cooking process done to them. So it's gonna take them less time in here, right? But right now my broccoli is raw, so I'm gonna throw it in. I'm gonna get it going. My next one will be carrot because it has the second longest. Then I'll look at putting the peppers and the onions together. They have very similar cooking times as well as they're very similarly cut, right? So they're same shape, same processing. Okay. As I'm going, I'm salt and peppering, I'm giving them seasoning, I'm making sure that they got lots of flavor to them. I'm giving it a test, so when you're making them, don't make just what you need. Make that little bit extra so that you can give those little taste buds. Hey, does this taste right to you? Do I have enough seasoning? Does it need a little bit of lemon? Whatever it is, does it need a little bit of garlic? Whatever it is. Now I've got a taster so that I can continue on. Okay. If I have my ones with the sides down, I'm gonna put those face down so that I get that nice little bit of coloring to them. Okay. I'm gonna shuffle it kind of to one side. And now I'm gonna add in my carrots. Okay. Now they're gonna cook. Looking for even surface cooking. Kind of noticing that I just don't have quite enough fat. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make a little opening that's at a hot spot. So quite often, especially when you have gas range, the hotter is towards the back of your oven because there's less air and there's less traffic and stuff like that. So you're gonna have hotter closer to the back of your oven. So being aware of that so that you're not, again, cooking higher on one side and not, and miscooking. I need a little bit more fat, so I'm just gonna add it in to that little hot spot that I have going for me here. Okay. My broccoli is starting to get some really nice color on it. Starting to green up. Look at that color. That's going to give it a nice little charred flavor to it, which is going to add to your dish overall. Okay. If you're noticing that your vegetables are kind of cooking just a little bit too much and you still have a little bit more, there's always the option to pull them out, put them on a separate pan, and add them back in once all the rest of it is cooked through. Okay. So I've got my carrots, my broccoli going. My carrots are starting to cook through, so I'm going to shuffle them over a bit. And then I'll add in my peppers and my onions. Okay. So my broccoli I can kind of brunch up because it's ready to go. Gives me more space for my onions and my peppers. My carrots have started to get that nice coloring. I'll flip them. Make sure that one side's not getting too cooked compared to the other. So with this, there's a couple options. I can now start making my sauce in here. So I'd add in my ginger and all those other kind of ingredients just to build that flavor within. I think I'm gonna put my sauce separately, make sure that it's nice and separate before I put it into my vegetables. And then that way I can plate over top and choose where my sauce is gonna go. Okay, so nice cook on everything. While this is going, your team should be helping, you're working together. Hey, I need this, it's ready to go. I'm going to season it a bit, making sure that I've got the salt and pepper. I'm going to put it into my hand, or I'm going to pinch out a little bit at a time because I'd rather under season and be able to add more at the end than I would over season and then, oh no, it's too salty. How am I supposed to serve this to the judges, right? So under and then finish at the end with a little bit of seasoning, then over and be over seasoning and giving your judges inappropriate seasonings, okay? When you're dealing with stuff on the stove, this one I don't have to because it's outward, but when you got stuff on the stove, we're making sure that we've got a hot cloth ready to go, or oven mitts, or whatever it is, so that we're not burning our hands. It's not fun burning your hands in competition. It takes away time from your meal and from your setup. Okay, so my vegetables are now cooked. I've gotten a nice color on my broccoli. I've got some softness on my onions and peppers, so I want those al dente. So I want them to still have texture and structure to them, but I don't want them so hard that it takes a steak knife to cut through them. Okay, now that they're all similar cook times, I can start mixing them up. Okay. And I've got my nice saute. Okay, so now my onions are cooked, my broccoli's cooked, my carrots cooked, all within the realm of me being able to cut through them. And they're ready to go. At this point, I'd be able to plate them. They'd be good to go. Okay. Okay. I'm gonna take this off and it's ready to go. I'm gonna start my salmon now. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start my salmon. I wanna make sure that I've got a nice amount of heat on my pan before I even think of throwing my salmon in, so that I can get that nice color to it. Okay. While this is kind of heating up, make sure that you're watching it, but at the same time you can go back to your station, you can clean up, right? So I've got a little bit of a messy station. I'm gonna take the 2 seconds, I'm gonna clean up, I'm gonna make sure that my workspace is clean, I've sanitized it, I've wiped it down, I don't have any dirty dishes there, that everything is nice and clean for me, right? And as well for your partners that you're working with. Okay, so my salmon pan going. So I've got my salmon here and my shrimp. So I pre-sliced it, ready to go. Salt and pepper. This upside is your beautiful presentation side. So you have this beautiful presentation side that's ready to go for you. And then you have this white side. So when we're putting it into the pan, we're making sure that this beautiful presentation side is the first one to go down, so that when we're flipping it, that's the one we're gonna see, right? So we now know that we have this beautiful, nice, slightly golden thing. My pan is nice and hot. I'm gonna add in just a little bit of canola oil, not an excess amount, but just a little bit, just to give it that little film to do it with. Okay. Okay. I'm gonna throw my salmon in. And I'm gonna shake it immediately. What that does is that prevents the skin and the flesh itself from sticking to my pan. And it's gonna prevent my salmon from getting all gunked up, right? So now I've got this nice free-flowing salmon that isn't stuck to the bottom, that's ready to go. That's good. So this one's a little bit crooked. When you're doing this, you're being mindful that you're working with something that can potentially be dangerous, right? So we have raw fish. I would, as soon as I've done placing it in, take the 2 seconds, go wash your hands, or wear gloves while you're handling it. Whatever you think sanitation-wise that you're gonna have the proper look for. Okay. So we're getting really nice coloring. Look at that. So I don't want it like super dark, but at the same time, I want this beautiful coloring, especially around the edges that I've got here, right? So nice even, it's a nice even cook. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna throw it either on a pan so that I can now use my shrimp on the same process, or I'm going to throw the entire pan into the oven, okay? So for me, I'm gonna throw it into the oven, ready to go. I do need this pan again, so I'm just gonna put it over here. Otherwise, I would throw it in the oven. You can sit at 350 to 400 so that it cooks through nicely. You're looking for a nice juicy fish that's not overcooked and not undercooked. So you should have none of this kind of, you should have maybe a little bit of this pink, but it shouldn't be all pink throughout the middle. Okay. I still have my nice hot pans. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna fry up my shrimp. What I do is Make sure that there's no water in here. So I'd put a piece of paper towel down, make sure that there's no excess water, because what that's gonna do is as soon as you throw it into your pan, all that water is gonna splash up with your oil, right? And I'd rather, and we wanna prevent as many injuries as possible. Right, so nice sizzle, I got a nice hot pan here. Okay, this is gonna be a really quick cook, and you don't wanna leave it, right? So with this, it's gonna be a quick cook, which is nice, but you don't wanna cook it and then leave it for an hour and it's just gonna sit there and it's gonna get rubbery and it's gross. This is gonna be along with your stir fry. So as you're doing your vegetables, maybe you're doing your shrimp at the same time, standing side by side, making sure that your shrimp's getting cooked properly, making sure that your vegetables are nice and fresh. Okay? So I'm gonna leave it all on one side, gonna season it up. I probably add in some pepper as well, just to make sure that I've got a nice, beautiful seasoning on my shrimp. Okay, I'm gonna look for similar colors that I did for my salmon. So I'm getting really close here with a little bit of spots of coloring. When you're cooking this, you're making sure that you have enough fat, but not excess fat, because the excess fat is just gonna cause your meats and your vegetables and stuff to become greasy and gross. You're looking to have just enough, right? So I started, especially with my vegetables, I started with a very minimum amount of fat. I seen it need a little bit more. I added it. It's way easier to add, similar to seasoning, way easier to add than it is to take away. Okay. So I've got some nice coloring on here. I'm gonna flip it over and allow it to finish cooking on the other side. So I've got these beautiful shrimp. I'm gonna look to not overcook them, so they should start turning pink. Should not be clear on the inside when we cut through, but they shouldn't be so hard that they become rubbery, okay? So again, with that, having that extra one there, just double checking to make sure, cut it open on your cutting open, make sure that it's cooked through and not rubber. And if it is, throw the same one back, the same tester, right? So I'm gonna give it a little bit of pressure here. And it's feeling cooked, right? So that's taken skill and years to get to, where I can touch a protein and I can tell whether it's done or not. For you, it's probably gonna be easier to cut open, but if you, while you're practicing, just feeling it, you're like, oh, that one's stiff. Okay, it's ready to go, it's done, right? So now my shrimp is all beautifully cooked and it's done. It's not over, it's not shrunk up into itself, right? So it'd be very much so like this. If it was overcooked, it'd be very into itself, very squished up. But it's not too far. It's got that nice little bit of curl, got nice color, and it's ready to go. So now you can put it on. Okay. So my shrimp is nice and done. I'm gonna start on my sauce. Okay. So I'm gonna turn my pan back on to a medium. And I'm gonna work on my green curry sauce. Once again, I see that my station's a little bit sketchy, and not as clean as I like it to be. So I'm just gonna give it a bit of a wipe to make sure that I'm working in the cleanest station as possible. Okay, so now I'm looking at my green curry. So when I'm looking at that, I'm making sure that all my ingredients are nice and fine and they're at a consistent size, so that they're consistent for cutting and they're consistent for cooking, right? So making sure that like my lemongrass isn't extremely large, my ginger is really fine, because then that's going to cause a difference in cooking time. Okay? So I want my pot going. I'm at just a little bit of oil. This one you don't want a lot of oil, because then your sauce is going to become oily and it's going to have those little floating chunks of oil, and I don't want that. So just a little bit of oil just to get it going and allow the vegetables and the ingredients to kind of cook. And some a little bit of oil. I'm gonna add my lemongrass. I'm gonna add in my ginger, making sure to scrape and have a minimal loss as possible on my ingredients. Add in my ginger. Okay. Give a little bit of stir. Okay. So I'm just sweating it a little bit just to like take out those flavors and enhance them. And I'm going. Once they've kind of softened, I'm going to add in my green curry. Once that's kind of toasted a little bit, gotten that flavor from the heat, I'm going to add in my cream and my coconut milk, and then I'm going to allow it to sit and stew. I probably turn it down to a low heat, let it sit, let it build those flavors throughout your competition, being careful that you don't scorch the bottom because that's going to change the flavor of your sauce. So just giving it a stir, making sure that none of it is burning, and then that my green curry is incorporating it throughout, getting that little bit of a toast to add that flavor, because you need to activate your seasonings and your spices. Okay. I can start to smell it. It's got this beautiful scent of the ginger and the lemongrass, and it's really started to come out. Okay, I'm going to pull it off, just so that I can take down a little bit of that heat again. Here, I'll pull it off that way. Okay, and then I can add in my cream. You hear that bit of a sizzle, but it's less so than it would have been on the element itself. Okay, give it a bit of a stir, and then I'm going to add in my coconut milk. With this, I'd probably use a spatula just to make sure that we're getting everything out of our can as possible. Okay, I'm going to put it back onto my heat and allow it to start cooking out. Okay. At this point, I'd maybe add a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper, just to finish off those flavoring. But not too much, because it's now going to sit and it's going to cook through, and you're going to get all those flavorings out from your shallot and garlic and the green curry and all that, and you want it to reduce a little bit. So I'm going to allow it to sit here, I'm going to allow it to reduce, and I'm going to allow it to build those flavors that you want out of your green curry. Okay. So I'm going to let it sit. It's got all the sauces, all the things incorporating. When it gets to the thickness that I want, what I'm going to do is I'm going to strain it, take out all those ingredients and all those flavors, so that I have a nice clean sauce, right? So there's no random chunks of lemongrass or whatever, and you're getting a nice clean sauce out of it. Okay. So I'm going to let that go for a while. In the meantime, I'm going to clean my station. So when I'm about to plate, I'm going to make sure that I have a gorgeous clean station so that my plates aren't going to get dirty, right? Because the worst thing is like for your plate to come up and all of a sudden it's dirty. So I'm going to take away my cutting board. I'm going to take away all of this, make sure that I have a nice, beautiful, clean station that's ready to go for myself. As well as you're doing that during the competition. Anytime you're starting something new, anytime you're looking to go, you're gonna make sure that you have a nice clean station, right? So cross-contamination, salmon's gonna be your biggest one for cross-contamination. So you don't want the cross-contamination, the salmon to be all over your station, and then all of a sudden you're doing dessert products on it, okay? So I've got a nice clean station. Now what I'm gonna do next is I'm going to make sure that I have everything here. So I've got my plates, I've got a dish to put my rice pilaf in so that I have a nice consistent shape on it. I've got my rice pilaf ready to go. I had a beautiful cream sauce ready to go. I've got my shrimp and my salmon ready to go. Okay, I now have everything ready to go. At this point, potential gloves helps with your plating. Make sure that you don't get fingerprints everywhere, making sure that you have a clean hands, all those kind of things. I'd give my plate a nice wipe. I'm now plating a hot dish. Hot things go on hot dishes, so I'm making sure that these have sat at a low temperature oven or a higher for less time. I'm now going to plate. So this is where your freedom comes in. You want to impress the judges, make sure that you have a beautiful plate, nice clean plating. It's not overcrowded, it's not undercrowded. You have the best creative dish that you can think of, right? It can be as simple as having just rice nicely plated in a dome. It can be as simple as just having 2 domes. It can be whatever you kind of think of. Take this time to make it creative, make it your own, but at the same time making it a beautiful stir-fry dish. Okay. Nice clean flip for me, and there we are. Okay, I've got my vegetables over here, ready to go. So again, counting them, right? Making sure that you have similar amounts to what you think you want, what you need, but your plates should be very, very similar in their color and texture and throughout. Okay. Making sure I've got some carrot in here, some vegetables right on top. Got onions throughout. Same with this dish. I now have got carrot, onion, and pepper on my dish. So with this, I've seen that it fell. Don't be afraid to replate. Take those 2 seconds, clear your plate, re-clean it, make sure that it's the best that it can be, right? Take those extra seconds, clear it out. You should have a little bit of extra to make sure that your plating's at optimal. Okay, so I'll use this one as my example now. I've got my salmon here. I'll do nice little shrimps all around. Okay. And then I'm going to move this one out of the way. I'm going to take my green curry sauce. So with this, I would not fully coat my salmon because you want to be able to see this. You did all this beautiful work to make sure that it was nice and golden. I wouldn't fully cover it. Make sure that it's visible because you put a lot of work into making sure that it was beautifully done. So just a little bit of sauce, let it run out. Don't be afraid to have a little bit of extra sauce along the edges. Rice is a bit of a drier product, so it's going to dry your thing. At this point, maybe a little bit of greenery, whatever you kind of think for garnish on top, but that's my finished dish.